System riding to the core. Yeah. Reppin' Inner City Left.
This is the Inner City Left broadcast. Today is Wednesday, April 8th. I am Amin TMK alongside Amoja Little Tanky Sumler. Hello, Amoja. What's up, man?
Boy.
How are you doing, bro? How are
Well,
you?
it's the last day of Passover. It's a day of rest. Keeping my mind fresh, free, not thinking about the end of civilization as we know it or no other such shit. Whoo, boy.
A lot has been transpiring, and, there was a big... I don't know. There was a push from us yesterday, well, should we do a broadcast? And I think if we did a broadcast yesterday, it probably would have been like, hey, guys, for what could be a really large strike, including possibly, and I think this is on the table still, is a nuclear strike from the United States. And a lot of people were on edge after the tweet that seems like now days ago, where Donald Trump said he was going to end Iran civilization, all kind of other stuff.
End a civilization.
End, yeah.
A civilization will end. Passive construction.
Yeah, it wasn't. But I think we can infer that is whom he was speaking about. Okay, let's now fast forward a little bit to last night. There was announced a ceasefire. Didn't have that one. This is the 10-point plan here. Can we go through these and just, I don't understand how this could be accepted. So this was not accepted, but Trump said he was going to look at it and he could work with it, whatever that means. I'm looking at a couple of these here. Let's talk about number one, non-aggression. Well, that's vague and probably won't happen. Number two, continuation of Iran's control over the Strait of Hormuz. That was already going to happen. Acceptance of enrichment. Seems difficult for Trump to say that's okay when that was the whole point. Lifting all primary sanctions, all secondary sanctions, termination of UN Security Council resolutions, termination of IAEA board governors resolutions, payment compensation to Iran, withdrawal of U.S. combat forces from the region, cessation of war and on all fronts, including against the heroic Islamic, I can't see it here with the banner.
Resistance of Lebanon.
So, okay, that happens. We get now a situation where this morning Israel hit Lebanon very hard. It seems like it's back on. What are we to make of the last 18 hours? What is your analysis?
Yeah, so ever since, I think one of the things that we have to do is set it in the context of what's happened in the last week, right? We've seen cash flows begin to leave the United States Treasury and go more towards the direction of China. Remember, this is a thing where if you think about the global economy as an engine, that engine literally runs on oil. So if you have a high performance engine, you don't even have to stop the gasoline. You just have to, gum up the throttle a little bit. That's what the Straits of Hormuz did in a very real way. It gummed up the throttle of the entire world global economy, which expects and accounts for so much oil predictably being released at exactly these intervals, at exactly this much. So when you start to get less than that, you start to cause hiccups all across the economy, the global economy, every aspect of the global economy. In many ways, people began to call the Hormuz the true nuclear weapon of Iran. The fact that they were able to utilize such a thing by simply controlling the flow of that thing, understanding how well they understood global markets, in many ways executing economic warfare against the United States just as much as the Americans had openly admitted they had economic warfare against the Iranians. I found it quite interesting though, right? Because all of a sudden they're labeling these things like economic terrorism, right? Once again, when the bad guys do it, it's bad. When the good guys do it, it's good. Even if we're doing the exact same thing, you know? Those were creating cascading failures that were not long, they cannot be quickly fixed in any kind of a way. Those hiccups are going to take quite a while to ripple out. And that's if there was a 100% continuation of the oil flow right now. You know what I'm saying? Because we still have to account for more than a month of missing supply in a world where the demand has not went down at all. And the demand is needed. It's baked into this is how much is needed for everything to work. That in addition to whatever happened in Isfahan, right? And it's very hard to make any type of a definitive statement. So for those of you that don't know why Isfahan, Iran was important, this is one of the areas where they had a nuclear reactor, and there are suspicions that abound that this is one of the places where Iran might have been keeping their refined uranium. And so the chatter has been consistently that what happened was not so much that a plane got blown out of the sky, because that's undeniable. This episode was not about a rescue, but a failed attempt to land Delta Force on the ground and to run in and seize the uranium and, take away the whole casus belli for the war. Like, we don't have to fight anymore. We've stolen your uranium, and apparently that did not go according to plan. All of that is chatter. Like, no one really knows what happened. But there are some things that we do know. We know the president came out and made statements. We know that the director of Central Intelligence came out and made statements. We know that Hegseth came out and made statements. The Joint Chief of Staff came out and made statements. These are not things that normally happen for like a normal pilot rescue. That's way over the pay grade of what happens, because these things happen in war. And contrary to the no pilot ever gets left behind. I mean, John McCain got left behind. He was in a fucking POW camp for quite some time. So, again, everything about the story that we're being told doesn't make sense. I think the most important thing I got from that takeaway was when the director of Central Intelligence said, and that's when the president and I began a disinformation campaign. Everything after that made sense. Nothing that you're hearing is going to be something you can really fully take for granted, one way or the other. Not from the Iranians, because there's a propaganda value, and certainly not from the Americans, who've already admitted they've created an information disinformation.
When is the disinformation campaign over? Does it stop yet? Is it done?
Right. Are we? Is it still ongoing?
What are we? Yeah. Everything they said was, I mean, Peter Hegseth, the pride of Princeton, got up there and was like, and the pilot went down on a Friday. He went up the mountain on a Saturday.
With a broken ankle. He climbed a mountain with a broken ankle, this man.
Yeah, yes. A mountain in Iran hid out and then rose on Easter Sunday. Like, this is the type of dribble that we have to hear from the Trump people. Anyway.
Like, was the pilot Frank Castle? Like, you know what I'm saying? Was Steve Rogers out there on a mission, man?
Yeah.
What the fuck? Killmonger doing it, man. He did it, man.
They got to be Marvel superheroes, man. It's just like, but we don't get to know. There's the pilots weren't there. We don't get to know the names of the pilots. So you guys just got up there and just made up this whole story like you would tell a child, and we're supposed to believe it. So this is the new thing. Let's talk about this new thing. Caroline Leavitt, we know her as White House correspondent, White House press secretary, saying the Straits of Hormuz open. We got Iran saying Straits of Hormuz closed. This is now another, like, this just goes back to where is the disinformation campaign? Where does it end? So now we know this. Lebanon is being hit by Israel really bad right now, like really bad, like just like already like 1,000 plus civilian casualties, and they're only striking civilian targets right now. Israel on Lebanon right now. Iran is saying ceasefire is over because of these ridiculous attacks on Lebanon. Caroline Levitt saying it's open. They're saying it's closed. I want to show you this, and I think this is what you sent to me. This is freaking insane, man. So apparently the brokering of the ceasefire that might be already over was the Pakistani prime minister, okay? So last night he tweeted this out. And as you can see in the beginning, it says draft with a asterisk, Pakistan's PM message on X. And that's how it begins. This is what he tweeted, the prime minister of Pakistan. So you already know. Okay. And then, so obviously this tweet was edited. The tweet from Karaoke Computer says, yikes, the edit history on this post. Pakistan's prime minister just pasted an email, almost certainly sent by the U.S. officials instructing them what to say. LOL, what a colossal fudge up. I mean, so already the ceasefire was, created and sent to the Pakistani prime minister. That should already kind of let you know where Pakistan is in the space. Yeah, I mean, is it closed? Is it open? What do you think about this? What's your response?
We spend a lot of time talking about the duplicity of countries like Saudi Arabia and Turkey, but nobody spends enough time talking about the exquisite game that Pakistan has to play, right? I will say Sharif is the acting prime minister because let's not forget, Imran Khan is the elected prime minister who was arrested under dubious corruption charges by the military. And millions of people continue to protest for his release as he is the duly elected prime minister. The things to remember about Imran Khan is Imran Khan, in a very serious way, started to put the bet on China. Did lots of Belt and Road Initiative, lots of military tech deals, right? And it looked like, they were certainly going in that BRICS path to be, Shanghai Cooperation Organization type, in that path, in that trajectory. Since then, however, Pakistan has been a lot less certain. We've had skirmishes with Afghanistan, skirmishes with India, Pakistan Prime Minister submitting Donald Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize, for those of y'all that remember that, even though the military successes that Pakistan has had recently are really due to the military arrangements that came because of Imran Khan, right? They were able to buy Chinese tech, J-10 planes, anti-aircraft, missiles, and that's how they were able to shoot so many of those Indian Rafales. Well, technically they're French Rafales flown by the Indian Air Force, right? But those successes then became the new prime minister's successes, even though he had nothing to do with it. It's also important to note that Pakistan is in a very complicated situation because they've recently tied a mutual defense pact with Saudi Arabia, who has come under fire, right, allegedly from the Iranians, and most certainly probably also some false flag situations from other people who have motivations to keep, enmity between Iran and Saudi Arabia. And so it puts Pakistan in this place where they might have to go to war against Iran. So, you know what I'm saying? Like, it makes them important. It makes them a kingmaker in some ways because the United States can use them as a proxy to come to their behest at the aid of the Saudis, should it go that way. So, you know what I'm saying? This is why the Americans have used the Pakistanis as a great lever, because that's an army that is to your immediate immediate east. You know, that's not an army you have to land. That's an army that's already there. That's the biggest problem the Americans have right now is how do we land an army, that can, begin to introduce ground troops into Iran. That's a consistent problem. So when you showed the 10 points, that's how we know none of this is real. This is what they both put out there so that both of these forces, the Iranians and the Westerner coalition, the Israeli forces and the Americans, could take a break for whatever reason, to allow them both the opportunity to say that a break is happening, even though nothing has fundamentally changed. So I think with Pakistan sending these messages and then having that come out that instead it's actually the Americans writing the messages, probably it's a warning to Iran, and that forces Iran to take pause because they probably hadn't considered the fact that they could be invaded from their eastern flank. And again, it would still be a very tough road to hoe because all of Iran is incredibly mountainous and treacherous, but you still have to account for, a country that has good logistics trains and a highly skilled military declaring war against you. That's just real geopolitics. And so the real politic of that forces the Iranians, whether they want to or not, to consider a pause. And what it really does is it allows everybody to have an opportunity to re-entrench themselves because no one should think for any stretch that this is over. None of the goals that Iran want have been met. None of the goals that the Americans or the Israeli want have been met. And so there's no reason for anyone to logically believe this is over, and we're already seeing that. The straits are being reportedly closed again. Israel is bombing civilians in Lebanon. That was definitely like I believe that was the 10th point, right? So the fact that that's happened, that already proves that there is no ceasefire that's based on any of the frameworks that are being put out by the Americans or by the Iranians.
Some more fruits of America's CIA labor, getting Imran Khan out of there and allowing something like this to go down. They're always doing that. I mean, we've talked about this before with General President Sisi. He's the general president of the Egypt. How about Al-Julani? Al-Julani, he's in Al-Sharik, not to dead name him, He's going through a lot right now in Syria. And it's just America is treacherous. They're doing deals under the table already to get prepared for this war that they knew they were going to enact on Iran. And now, like you said, the American public is going to continue to be gaslit by the Trump administration. They're literally saying the strait is open when it is clearly not. I think only 5 ships have been through today. So far, it's 2:30 here on the East Coast. So I don't understand, the tricksy and false, man. They are tricksy and false, and they are just making stuff up, and they're trying to feed it to the public. And, they can use this narrative that I know they love to use. Oh, well, America can't contain Israel. They can't contain Israel. Who even knows how their setup is? And they're so close to the hip, it's hard to just see anything that Israel does that's not, a part of the American, script or whatever. But again, it's just more lies, more ridiculousness that we have to go through. And we don't get to talk about what it is. And, it's frustrating. I can imagine the frustration from the average, American person or really anybody out there trying to figure out what's what.
Yeah, the ground war is inevitable. No matter what you hear, no matter what anybody's saying, the ground war is inevitable. They're moving their pieces, and probably the proxies will attack first. If I had to guess, with the strikes that especially the Americans and the Israelis did last night, bombing the railways and the bridges, what they're trying to do is make it harder for the Iranian military to move through. Look, moving through mountains is hard for everybody. It's hard for the enemy. It's hard for the good guys, whoever those may be, right? And this happened in the northwest kind of sectarian region. This is very close to Azerbaijan, and this is very close to where the Iraqi Kurds are. Remember, there was that whole conversation from the president where he stated that they gave a lot of weapons to the Kurds, and yet somehow I guess they just kept them. He also admitted openly to having armed the protesters, which we've been saying on Inner City Left since the beginning. You know what I'm saying? And that just showed how much the president is crashing out. Like, you're destroying the narratives that they worked very hard to create to make it easier for the neoliberals to go along with this war, so that nobody
You're telling me 45,000 people were killed by the Iranians
in 3 days.
In 3 days, but only 70,000 were killed in Gaza.
Right.
I mean, the numbers just do not make sense. For 2.5 years, getting close now to 3 years, the Israeli regime has been bombing Gaza, and somehow they only got to 70,000, while Iran in 2 weeks was able to mow down 45,000 people.
Not 2 weeks, 3 days.
Oh, 3 days. Sorry.
3 days. In 3 days. Right? Again, consider the fact the United States and the Israelis have been bombing Israel with all of their power and might for more than a month. And they're not saying that they've reached 30,000 civilians, right? Even though we're seeing them blow up schools and hospitals. The number buggers, buggers belief. But again, we already know that we're in the middle of a disinformation system. There's a psychological war that is happening. That's what they openly stated. The war is going to happen. They're trying to make room for the Kurds to attack from the northeast. They want to invoke the Pakistanis to attack from the west, and they're still trying to invite the Saudis and the United Arab Emirates to attack from the south. This is what their plan is, before Americans, and that'll be the way they sell it, it's a coalition of the willing. Americans are only providing, information and tactical support, right? Because you then have other bodies to send into this trap, because
you want to Ukrainify it best you can.
Absolutely.
And that's how we know, and look, that's another reason we know the numbers in Ukraine are just absolutely silly. Right. We know it's got to be now 1.5 million, dead and wounded in Ukraine. Colonel McGregor, whatever you want to say about him, he probably got some pretty good information on it, saying it's 2 million. So, nothing but death and destruction brought to the Middle East. Looks like what is, in the future. There's no ceasefire. Ceasefire is just a silly idea that we all had, or not we had, but, they had to say. We saw the same ceasefire happen in Gaza, a few months ago, where the food is still being stopped. Baby formula, they just stopped sending the baby formula again. Death penalty for all Palestinians, just the worst things ever. And that's sort of what Israel interacts, is how they move. Now major attacks in Lebanon. It goes back to, like, it looks like the forecast is an ever prolonged, always on conflict that we've been seeing. And a lot of countries are going to have to figure out where they stand. Iraq is one of them. We don't know how that's a major situation happening right now. Syria's got its own problems. Al-Julani / Al-Shar's got his own problems. And now Pakistan, obviously, with the Imran Khan move, and, them kind of just being signaled to as being an American ally for sure. So I don't know what the future holds, but ain't no ceasefire.
No.
Yeah.
This is a re-entrenchment. Everybody's preparing, digging in. Think about this as the 1 minute round, but the 1 minute break between rounds. It's about to get right back popping.
talking to their corners.
It's about to get
Spitting
right
in a
back
bucket.
popping. Yeah, if it slowed down at all, So
It hasn't slowed down for Lebanon, that's for sure. It's actually turned up. So there's no ceasefire for them. And the conflicts continue. Maduro is still in a jail in New York City. It doesn't seem as if, look, we're not waiting for the Democrats to do anything. I mean, I don't understand how this impeachment process has not begun. It's sort of performatively done for Pete Hegseth, but
there's no the same fingers that are going to point at Donald Trump. You have to point at people like Chuck Schumer, Lindsey Graham, all of these guys. They're all out there. I mean, this is a bipartisan effort. This has been a project of America for at least since the fall of Mossadegh. I mean, you don't get to try to break out of the Western hegemonic sphere of control. You don't. They don't forgive you. I mean, you can look at what they're doing with Cuba, for all of the talk of bringing freedom and wanting democracy around the world. What they really want is predictable resource extraction, because ultimately capitalism is the god, and it must have what it must have.
Yeah. We'll continue to update as things move forward. We'll just give a shout out to our podcast listeners. We're available everywhere you find podcasts, Apple, Spotify, et cetera, et cetera. Like, subscribe if you're on YouTube. Leave us a comment if you listen to us on a podcast platform. It's always nice to see some nice things because, of course, the ops and bots are already out there. These leftists don't know what they're talking about, going crazy, all that type of stuff, which is, confirmation that we're doing it in its own regard. Fables, Foibles, Other American Sins, link in the description. Amoja's book of poetry. You need to get on that. Makes a great gift for your writer friends. Patreon.com/InnerCityLeft. Just dropped a new song today, by the way. Filthy with our Brody OGB, One Great Bastard. And yeah. Any final things that we forgot? Any final words for today?
$39,612,650,000 spent on the war effort just so far as operational expenses. None of that takes into account the potential cost of 2 C-130s that may or may not have been lost, right, to enemy fire or the Americans admitting they blew them up. 2 A-10 incredibly armored attack Warthog fighters, an F-16, 8 Little Bird helicopters, and two no, not the Apaches. What were they? The Hueys? Hueys down. And 1 Chinook. Whatever that cost. Just over the weekend.
But can't afford daycare, no universal health care, no student loan relief. None of that for you. No more SNAP. Got to cut the SNAP benefits because it's important to start an unnecessary and illegal war in Iran. Very important, bro. Get your priorities right.
Important. We got to do it. Mm-hmm. We got to do it. Or else we could wake up in a world where we don't control everything anymore. And think about how scary that would be.
Yeah. Yeah. For Amoja Lil Tanky Summer, I'm Amin TMK. This is the Inner City Left broadcast. Peace.
System riding to the core. Yeah. Reppin' Inner City Left.